All right, we're live. And I'm sitting here today we're at Retcon in Vegas with Darcey Forbes from Renew. Renew is hello. Love doing these things live and in person. They're so much better than doing them over. Well, not better. They're just a different,
it is a different
feel. We connected through.
It was one of these.
Through LinkedIn, through one of these things.
Yeah.
So there you go. And wonderful time pre-chatting. We actually just had lunch at the conference here, and we're going to do getting to hell yes. So what's exciting about the getting hell yes for everyone's listening is that we had a great conversation previously about just our philosophies around renewal income and renewals with respect to cap rates, et cetera, and the conversation around just the renewal experience. And so the part of the whole thing about getting to hell yes is talking about buyers are looking to solve problems, and of course, open the news or open any newsletter right now, and the problem that everyone's trying to solve is around renewals all of a sudden.
Retention's huge.
And the thing that's missing is like the technology isn't really there. The practices and process and people isn't really there. The data's not there. And so they're struggling to try and solve. So there are a lot of people trying to Google, how do I fix retention at my property or at my unit or for my owner, et cetera. So exciting conversation around the renewal side of things. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And first thing we're going to do is to kick it off like we always do. Bit about yourself, your background. How'd you get up in this role? And tell me some more exciting stuff about Renew.
Oh boy, All right. Start with the old lady in the room. 25, 26 years now. I've been around the block a little bit. Darcey Forbes. I am the head of real estate operations industry principal at Renew. My background started off in. I'll do a little story time.
Do it.
So
that's what we're here for.
So moved from Chicago, came to California, following my family. Got transferred out here. Was ready to be a history teacher. Don't ask why. Not really sure what I was thinking back then. And then once I got to California said, hey, you need 2 more years. I was like, yeah, I just graduated. Let me think about it. I was living at a great building that was managed by Oakwood Worldwide, and I got a summer job. Now, a lot like all of you out there, it's the longest summer of my life. I've never left, but it gave me the greatest opportunities I could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
I mean, moved around, got promoted really quickly, just became a sponge, just wanted to learn everything about multifamily because I didn't know what multifamily was.
It's crazy. It's this massive asset class in front of your nose that no one knows anything about.
Yep. And you always thought it was Mr. and Mrs. Roper. Now that dates me again for some of you, but look it up on Google. You'll figure it out.
Yep.
So afforded me a lot of great opportunities. Oakwood was a great organization. They are still a lot of great players out there. And then I moved over to Essex Property Trust, and they recruited me because we had a great training program, and they didn't have a training program, and I built a training program. So maybe I'm doing something with my history major. That might be the only segue I can do.
There you go.
And so then it traveled all over the place, and then jumped on the supplier side. And that was tempted to me by one of my dear friends, Miss Anya Ramians, and worked with Dennis Cogbill at Rent. The old days of Rent when it was just themselves. And then afforded me the opportunity to meet our founder here at Renew, who came knocking in a few years ago and said, hey, can I bounce some ideas off of you? And I was employed at the time. I was like, I think he's trying to recruit me. So finally I asked the question. He goes, yeah, because I need a utility player. Yeah. And I had done another startup. It was called Modern Message. Many of you probably know it as Community Rewards. I've always been focused on, what is the resident experience? What is it like? How do we make it better for them? And, kind of maybe the segue is why Renew? I think if all of you look underneath the hood and what we've done in the renewal moment over the past, even when I was on site, it has not changed. There's been no investment in technology. There's been no investment in making that experience better for the residents. And that's what Renew was born to do. And that's where Rob Hayden and Kevin Murphy came together during the pandemic, when all of you were looking at how to acquire new residents, and then went to, the front lines to make sure that you've got all that technology. Nobody was paying attention over here to one of the most ignored opportunities. That's the renewal moment.
Keeping them.
Yeah. What industry, I always laugh at this, what industry thinks that 50% turnover is acceptable? And it was just like, and there's no investment in, there's no strategy. And that's because there's a lack of technology.
Well, I think that, and they allocate root cause of churn to the people, not the experience. Yeah. And so okay, a certain amount of people are going to get, they're going to get a bigger family, or they're going to get a bigger job,
or they're going to
change. Life's going to change, right? But that's not that. It's not 50% of the reason why people leave.
And if you look at it, 75% of those folks, they're still going to rent in the market. So
Yeah.
what happened to them? You know, and it's the lack of, nurturing that goes with it. If you look at what, I'm probably going off the rails already. But if you look at it, what we do traditionally is that it's a PDF attached to an email, or it's something that's dropped in a portal. I think about everything that you did to get Guillermo to, move into your community. And now he has the biggest financial, decision to make again. And it's like, here, it's binary. Let us know if you're going to stay or going to go.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, love that's within that. And I'm not trying to get, over my skis with this, but if you create a more dynamic experience for residents, and you use something that's like Renew, which is an automated and streamlined, opportunity to take all of those root tasks away from people. You and I talked about it. Guess what? If they don't do all the administrative tasks, they get to now nurture the relationships with the residents. And now you have happy residents. You have happy team members that actually like to come to do their job.
Well, and it's interesting, like the renewal thing. I mean, it's you've worked so hard to earn that revenue. And then they do nothing, and there's no also discipline around keeping the revenue.
That's true.
And so the absence of that discipline, I think it's what's interesting about what you guys are doing is that the first choice is to put somebody there who's friendly and bubbly and whatever, and gets to know everybody, and that's going to be the person that helps lock in the renewal. But the reality is that's not why people renew.
No.
Right. No. Like, if Darcey's super friendly, I love seeing her every single day, that's not why I'm staying in the building. Right. And so it is interesting to kind of dial back and go, okay, now that everybody cares about revenue renewals in every market, there really is an absence of software to solve that problem. Yeah. And we're not going to hire people to do it because we can't hire the people. That's not going to happen. No. You can't pencil that in right now. And
but you don't need it if you have automation. And I think that's like, especially, being at this conference where we're all talking about where can we give time back to people? Like we even think, I would say that it's about 33 hours is, and I think that's a very conservative number, is the amount of work that's being done in the renewals. Each and every
per
month.
Resident or per
month for the batches of renewals. Now you've got 3 different renewal batches that are running at any given moment every month. Like if you go to your property teams and ask them how much time they're actually spending, it's probably diminished because they don't have the time because they're doing everything else with it. When you streamline and optimize the process, not only are you, in improving operational efficiencies, but you also now, as an operator at the higher level, you can start to look at what is our strategy? What are we going to do at scale that we can improve the retention program? Those things were absent before, our technology came into place. And that's why, I will, do a little bit of, test pounding. Like, we're the only ones that have really gone deep into this to better understand what we can do, not only to improve the experience on both sides of the fence, but even boost retention.
So the problem that you guys solve is that the fact revenue renewal rentals
every single RE.
Oh my gosh, I wasn't out that late last night. Renewals are important to everybody.
Yeah.
And there is no software, there's no discipline in around it right now.
Not right now.
And so consequently, to allocate resources to something that is a kind of a new priority, your choices are hire it, outsource it, or automate it. Or technology, right? And so the alternative that you guys provide is a technology piece to solve that renewal problem. You have the data, you data to prove it out, right, as well.
Yeah.
I've often wondered, when we talk about make readies as an example, right? Resident leaves, they give their notice, do the pre-walkthrough, they leave, do the make ready piece. Now it's brand spanking new for a new resident that I've gone and spent, I've spent almost a year of rent or half a year of rent to go acquire that resident. That resident locks in. Is there anything that we do in the during the residence tenancy that would be an improvement on that unit? Does that ever happen?
It depends. I would say different classes of assets. There's like I've seen even operators even leading up to renewal be like, hey, if you renew it at like a 12-month lease,
we'll repay.
We're repaying, or maybe like lighting, we'll replace that, and that might be an option for it. But I think there's a lack of tools to execute that, because if you put it just in a letter, it goes stale. Responses lag. Residents go, okay. But if there's something when they come into when they look at our platform saying, you can upgrade this for this 12-month lease at this rate in a time-based, incentive period. Or you could say, like, with Renew Cash, say, hey, Guillermo, if you sign by the next, 10 days, we'll give you, $50 that you can spend on your apartment. So all these different things. But the tools that are there today don't elevate any of that to incentivize them.
And it's interesting because you even look at like the renewals right now, like now you're seeing concessions on renewals.
Well, you're seeing concessions, that awful word that we didn't say for a long time. Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. Like, well, hey, if you sign up, we're not going to charge you, 2 months rent or something like that.
And that's when you could look at, like, when you look at alternate ways of rewarding a resident to stay, not devaluing the asset, not doing the concessions. Now you're doing concessions on the move-ins. We see that, pretty, rampant. And we're starting to see some markets adjust. But, that's where you want to stop the leakage.
Yeah.
You don't want your residents looking across the street going, is it going to be cheaper for me to move?
Right.
And it's not,
it gets into the question of like the whole, like, 3 principles of competition, right? You compete on product, product innovation, compete on customer experience, or you compete on price. And if you're giving out concessions on renewals, now you're choosing to compete on price. Which is a very expensive way to run a business, right?
Yeah, a very dangerous
Given
way.
that they could be competing on resident experience. And so, like, if you think about it, like from an acquisition perspective, you can acquire based on experience, and then eventually, and then keep them based on, or acquire them based on price, I guess, and then keep them based on experience, right?
Yeah.
And that's just not a convention that's commonly held.
It's, I mean, I think that we have overloaded, like I said, it was at a Texas Apartment Association when I just sat in front of the group, and it was mostly like, property managers and the doers. And I said, I implore you, if you are an executive in leadership, go through the lease renewal process. Not only do 100% of your residents go through this very lackluster, bad engagement process, but your teams are doing it too. And it's just, and they all were just like, yes, please, somebody just come in and see how much time it takes us, how much manual process it is. So there is no time. There's no gift of time to give back to them, so that, to your point, I'm going to acquire you on price, but I'm going to keep you on experience. I don't have time for it. And the staff turnover is big right now.
Yeah. Because there's no, it's kind of like a helter-skelter experience or discipline. I'll use that word because I want to cover off both the technology and the process. It's helter-skelter in terms of, like, there's no predictability around it. Like, one thing we talk about all the time is, like, okay, it's one thing to talk about maybe like in terms of an aspiration, right? Can we aspirationally predict which residents are going to stay?
So yes,
right, because that's the next level of just like making it better.
That's where it's going to start to come, to fruition. Especially, we've got a very deep, reporting platform, and what we see, let's just do it in the most amateur way. And I think this is a very important point that we do as a part of the process. I don't mean it, dismissively. It's an amateur, but if I come to you when you're halfway through your lease to ask you very simple question: are you likely to renew? Very likely or not likely. If you surface that up beforehand, not only are you informing your property teams what they need to take as action, but now, because, renewal has, our CEO loves saying this, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because you've got revenue management that cares about renewal. Yeah. You've got their operations. You've got marketing that's looking at it. So if we surface all that information to you, and it's like, well, Darcey, over the past, 6 months, also scored the community at this rate. Yep. She had a bad move-in. Like, we now see what's going to be the predictor once you start to pull the pricing and deliver it before you even start, doing all that action.
But I find it interesting. So, like, the thing that you and I are chatting about the first time we connected is, like, when I take a look at a lease up's got attribution to that lease up.
Yep.
Right. Someone got paid. One person got bonus or paid for signing that lease.
Yep.
But in a renew context, because it's experience based, it's a team of people.
Yep.
And so it's difficult to find that attribution moment for a renewal, because that resident experience is a multi-touch experience, right? And it's the lowest point and the last point is often what people remember the most. And so when you talk about renewals, like, how do you find that people mobilize around accountability for renewals?
So again, like, if you start to look, we start to see partners shift when they come onto our platform. Okay. It's not like, you're still going to have your bonus structure for the acquisition of a customer. But when we get to this, like, it's this, everybody gets a bonus if, Guillermo renews. Yeah. Okay. Well, what other efforts was put into that? Really not.
Well, exactly.
You trade that out. Now we see, some operators saying, we're actually going to pull back the renewal reward. We will reward based upon reviews. And we've been doing that for years, but it's like, we've just never cut that stream off. It's like, hey, if we want to say renewals are important, it's equal to the resident experience,
Mhm.
not the binary outcome of like, because Guillermo said yes.
Right. And so they're actually taking the outcome of the renewal event and bringing it forward to all the different events that contribute to the renewal
You
event.
could do it as specific as like, it's a survey, or you could just say the totality, like what's
Yeah.
your score overall for the
Right.
community. Did you, it's kind of like if you hit your metrics, like,
Mhm.
okay, you'll get a bonus of this if you hit, this level, and then it goes up in the kicker to here. So
Yeah. Well, because it's not like, and this also happens in maintenance. As we think about maintenance as being a single flow of events, service requests through to, maybe closing the work order and then invoicing for the work order. But the reality is that all of those different flows are all happening at the same time. So you in a service request context or work order maintenance context, you have a service request that's been opened and a work order that's been closed and an invoice has been cut all on the same day for different experiences, right? And then on the renewal side of things, like not everybody is on the same 12-month calendar.
Right.
And so the renewals are happening every single, I mean, I know there's seasonality to it, but like there's
Yeah.
batches, right? And so the batches of people are renewing in their own at their own timeline. But it's kind of like looking at things in rows versus columns, because now we're thinking about, okay, so there's always a renewal opportunity in every single day, every single day.
Yeah. I mean, those touch points are existent all the time. And then, when we get to, the point of the renewal, then there should be a less surprise, that you wouldn't be looking across the table like, oh, wow, I didn't think Guillermo was going to move. If those touch points are in there and you can start to see the satisfaction meters start to change. And again, it sounds cliche, but if you have, you take these root tasks off of their, teams, then you're going to allow them to be in the spirit of, like, even we heard today where it was like, change the personas of the property teams. We're not cutting people. Technology is not going to get rid of people. But maybe we reposition them into better positions that are in the spirit of service, the concierge model.
I mean, I think that, and so like, that's a whole like flip. I used to work at a company and we were all oriented around service lines, right? So it was kind of like the entire organization was based on what we did, not what the customer wanted to buy. Right. And so after I left, they changed everything to be how the customer was oriented. This is a big company, right, that did this, and they changed everything around the customer. So we went from being like, let's say, service line 1, service line 2, service line 3, into like an energy practice, a finance practice, a banking practice, because we wanted to orient ourselves horizontally around what we did, but vertically in terms of what the customer is looking to solve for, because then we're able to actually understand what we're trying to solve for the customer. And to me, that made a ton of sense, because we're eliminating that step of, I'm an expert at this horizontal solution, and then now I need to tee up with somebody who's an expert in the vertical solution. And so from a resident perspective, by solving these personaing the people that are on the site, we can actually say, okay, you're all mobilizing around this resident experience. And so for anyone who's done customer experience work, what's really exciting about customer experience work, when you think about it, is you start documenting. For starters, if anybody does this stuff, you become a bit annoying, because you start noticing things you didn't notice before, and you can't unsee things. So like, I did some work with a nonprofit for about 4 or 5 years ago, and we went through and we documented the employee experience, the first interaction experience, the kind of like the, let's say, midpoint experience, and we just drafted them every single step of the way, every single thing you notice. So things like, as an example, knowing where to park, right? Like not having an arrow where to park creates a bit of like tension and discomfort in somebody's mind. And so they drive up to this place and they didn't know whether to go left or right. And then when they got through the first decision, they'd make another decision. So you get rid of all those decisions for people.
It's removing the friction
It's
and
so
the
work.
frustration. Yeah.
It's just work.
But it's when it's like, Daryl Smith at Kettler, he's like, we have to create the right playbook. It's not a procedure anymore. It's like going deep, like you said, like, what is it like when they first drive in? No arrows. Do you know where to go? And what's the chances? Like, I'm just going to leave.
Or just like, what, I don't know, or I got lost or whatever, right? I'm just going to leave, So when you guys are in the context of getting hell yes. So we talked about the problem. who's the buyer for that? So you can sell the man. I mean,
Yeah.
like, there's the three buyers. There's the owner operators. There's the owners. There's the managers. Who's buying this?
I'll go deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we see a lot of ownership groups that are coming to us now because there's starting to be a little bit more, I think, involvement from owners where beforehand.
Because when
assets,
when you're writing checks.
Yeah. You get a little more involved now. Different economics for us all.
Yeah.
We understand. If I go really, if you look at Renew, because there's a lot of like strategy that goes into the actual product itself, and it involves revenue management. Now, why does revenue management care? Okay, because they're the pricing the units and they want to make sure that they have pricing integrity. There's no deviations from what they said we're going to go to market with. They don't want deviations from their lease terms. So they're the ones that go, hell yes.
Yeah.
They're like, I want to get in there.
Yeah.
Great. Then we get into operations. Now, what we heard, for the past, 6 to 8 months, what the most important things now, and even for owners, is operational efficiencies. Like, how do we improve this? And that's where, we have operations jump in. Then we have another group that gets really involved, because the way that we look at it, we say renew the customer, not the lease. And the way to unpack that is we say, first and foremost, we want you to renew in unit, and we give tools for the operators to execute. But maybe your lifestyle change. I'm now permanently living from home and are working from home, and now I need a 2-bedroom. Great. Renew can upsell. Oh, so you'll stay in property.
Yeah.
The third component, this is like where, marketing gets excited, is like it's improved not only the customer experience, but we can deploy a way of doing a sister property referral closed network. So, all right, you're up in Calgary, you're not going to move down here into California, Las Vegas. Yep. Guess what? We have properties here for you. Yeah. So now it's like, you don't have the resident have to go back out and do all of that research. It's like, what? I did like where I live. Yep. I do like that management company. I do want to stay. And then you can deploy an incentivization program where it's like, stay with us and, we'll reward you $200. Yep. Now you cut down on customer acquisitions costs. So you start to see like it touches so many different departments.
But isn't it crazy? Like, this doesn't sound too disfamiliar to how we buy things today.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's the part that is just like,
we make it an e-commerce experience. That's the whole
but even like Bonvoy
thing.
or Marriott or Starwood, like, or American versus United versus Delta, like, it's just, we don't want to make those decisions. Those are like painful decisions, right? Especially where you're going to live. Make it easy. So like it's kind of like that, like, take my money, right?
Well, that was the early research. Like when we were, starting to get these, the residents were like, this is so much easier than what I have to do today. Yeah. And we got some really critical feedback on like the traditional methods. We're like, well, that's great. Then we're on to something. We had operators that came to us and said, what's nice about this? It's clean, it's easy. They understand exactly what is expected of them. And not just sitting there with a piece of paper looking and,
just getting a contract. I mean, getting a legal contract that's like, like,
make your decision.
You don't know if you're being sued or if you're being right. I mean,
there's a lot of legalese.
It is. We took a look at. We did the same thing kind of previous career in banking. I think maybe chatted about this. Like, we knew everything about stage of life, right? Because like the financial products that you choose to consume are very highly correlated to your stage of life. And so we were able to predict when people were likely to start thinking about having a family, likely to look to move up from a 2-bedroom, apartment or townhome to a home, first mortgage, all those financial products. We would educate them on the new products before they even emerge, right? And so if it was a college savings account or whatever, we were educating the customer about it before that life event occurred. And I can see the same thing being true in multifamily. I mean, this is like, we're not inventing anything, right? It's like, okay, have you been to, have you considered, hey, by the way, like, this is some things that are available, and you're keeping them within the same family. So now what's interesting about that is that, again, the same question as before is, who's most interested in that, the manager or the owner?
Both, because like the reporting suite that we have, like, it gets really, deep and robust, and I won't give all the secrets away, but they will get into the devil's in the details, like what is happening in performance at the renewal moment. It's absent in most, technology today. Now you get to see, like, what are your trends? Where are you losing people? Where are they moving to? Because we, garner all that information from, a very small and, critical moment. But we can really like open Pandora's box to understand your residents better at that, critical moment.
I mean, I think what I like about it, and for people to kind of hear it out loud, is like, to your comment about e-commerce, right? It's a share a wallet conversation.
Mhm.
So like people are going to allocate a certain amount of their income towards housing,
Yeah,
right?
a
And it's going to
considerable
be
amount.
considerable, and it's going to be it could be ownership, it could be rental,
Mhm.
it could be two different places, it
Yep.
could be whatever, right? And so that the way you're describing it is you're like, it's not about the rent, the lease, it's about how much is that consumer going to be spending on housing,
Mhm.
and how can I capture most of that wallet?
Yep.
And then if you look at it over a period of time, that someone's maybe a renter, right? So renters, I think the numbers like they'll rent up to 27, and there's a bubble that goes to 37 or whatever. But like in that duration period of renting, like if you're looking at, let's say, maybe 15 years of rent that you keep collecting from a resident, why are you not looking at it in terms of the share of wallet of those 15 years
100%.
versus the share of wallet that I'm getting for this 18-month, this 12-month
The
lease,
12-month lease.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. And so when you have that conversation to people with buyers, like what's the light bulb? Like when does the light bulb go on that you're talking about?
I think the environment that we're in right now, I think, we've created an incredible platform that is, very straightforward, and they understand like, yes, this is a better experience. And there's a lot of, we say that we just, give you the levers to pull, so now you can build strategy on any given month. So they go, this is great. I have better, visibility. I have better control. The impact is, where we really start to get, especially because of the economic environment, we're driving decisions far quicker. And we're almost like, from traditional methods to what we do. And I'll keep that behind the wall. You can call me and I'll let you know.
We'll close with that.
But, just imagine. So right now we're reducing, vacancy loss by at least an average 5 days.
It's huge.
There's the light bulb.
And it's like
That's the hell yes moment.
$60 a day per unit.
If you want to do your 50% churn,
Yeah.
and that's where the back of the napkin math goes very quickly.
Because you think about it, people were like, if you look back at articles, and I mean, like these aren't my opinions. Look back at articles like 2 years ago, right? The whole thing of like trying to keep a resident in unit was to avoid the make ready expense.
Yeah, but that was the whole thing, because and especially in this economy,
That's not why-
these are escalating.
Yeah, but like, but
But
that's
not
not what
thinking
you're actually. I mean, if you're looking at the make ready expense as the reason to retain a resident, you've completely lost lost the mail. Like you completely missed it.
And then the other thing too that we impact is, if you start to look at, if we get those decisions, 3 to 5 times faster, you are also impacting your occupancy forecasting, pricing, everybody, that's again, so
right. Because you don't have to, there's no concessions on a full building.
No, was that nice? And you might be able to drive rents, but I mean, there's so many economic impacts that the renewal moment, that's why we always, whenever we have a conversation, we go, it's the most critical, but it's the most ignored.
And do you find that like folks that are buyers that are moving in towards, like, what kind of external event? And I'll ask it better. It's like, does the refinancing drive a better awareness around refinancing event, drive better awareness around?
Yeah, I don't see that today.
Okay.
I mean, I there's absolutely a correlation. It's just not been elevated.
Like you go in a Yardi matrix, you can see when the loan's the term of the loan's about to
Yeah.
expire, and you can kind of like filter on that list and go with that.
Yeah, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
I mean, it'd be
understand.
interesting. Like if you're talking to somebody, hey, I see you're refinancing. How's your renewal rates? Like if you got a loan, a term loan that's due in like 6 months, and renewals are all like this.
Those conversations, are being had now.
Yeah.
I just think that, if we look in the rearview mirror, where I kind of made, nobody was investing in customer acquisition technology before the pandemic.
Yeah.
When trade outs were very high, and that wasn't a big conversation, and now where we are today, those I think every financial impact is starting to be elevated at that renewal moment.
Well, because you've got really lumpy renewals, then your refi is going to be sketchy, and that's not good if you're an owner, right? Especially if you're in a position to maybe take some money off the table, or if you want to sell it or whatever.
Yeah, and things are tight right now.
Yeah, well, and it's a good question, and because it's such a hot topic, it's a question that everyone's going to ask. Right? What's your book look like?
I think we've exposed that now. I think the renewal moment. I think that, there's still other metrics that are in play with it, but this is where it's now like, oh, we can't afford to have poor retention.
If you go look at just the organization of a property management organization, right? There's an EVP of leasing, right?
Yeah.
But there's very few people that are in charge of renewals.
No.
Right.
Well, and now I will challenge just a little, because now, the other word in vogue is centralization.
Sure.
So we've seen management companies make the efforts of like saying like, let's move the assistant manager and we're going to make, pods and they're going to take care of that. Even then, when you put that effort forward, which is a great model to have, tie it in with technology, you're just, again, enhancing the performance of those people. That's why AI is here. It's like AI is not taking things away from people. It's making them more efficient and making their jobs better.
Yeah. Like we say all the time, like there's no doctor lost their job because telemedicine.
Yeah. Right. The radiation, the radiology guy was fired because he's still there.
He's still there. Right. We just able to serve customers better, faster, cheaper. And that created a whole new standard of what we expected to consume. Interesting. So when you take a look at renew, and so the kind of given the historical priority to renewals, and you're talking the market, I mean, how do you create urgency around renewals, or how does urgency around renewals emerge as something that they're now going to say, you know what, we got to solve our renewal problem this quarter?
I think data is everything, right? And when we look at how much we collect, and we've got a gold mine of, information for folks. When they can start to, recognize that in real time, here was the issues beforehand. It was because it was always done in arrears. Right.
Oh, yeah, like
it wasn't until we closed the book and it was like, oh, how did we do on those renewals? Now every single executive down to the property manager can see what is happening in performance. That is going to adjust the way that how you're going to do your next month strategy. So I think that's the impact of it. And the other side too, it's like if you can make it easier for the resident to make a decision and responses don't lag, you can use a lot of different tools, incentives, deadlines, like getting them to respond quicker. But if it's, easier as an experience, that's what you're going to have as an outcome too.
And so the thinking
palm
is
of my hand, I can just say, here's all the things I want, send it off in the property.
Right. So, but like if I'm the property manager, like what am I trying to solve for? Like when am I trying to solve for the renewal problem? Like, because I've got people that are doing it right now. I've got the piece of paper that drops in your inbox, the DocuSign or whatever.
I think it's an everyday event, and I think that's one of the things too is that we now allow for, because like residents, they'll sit back and they probably won't tell you exactly what's on their mind, why they're not going to renew.
It's like people that quit. They don't tell you why they quit.
And so we will nurture and try, to get those residents to respond. And when they do, it's a really interesting outcome of like how many do end up renewing. But that's where we say automate the routine, personalize the exception. So we get Darcey's upset about X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Guillermo's going to take care of it. And now that's where you can personalize the service. So there's reactive. And then the point that you're asking, where do we, surface data of like, this could become a concern with your renewal strategy. And what's nice about it too, is that the flexibility of the program, again, with every party that's involved, if there's an adjustment that needs to be made on the fly, and we've seen that, especially when the market started to go differently, technology can deploy that quicker than saying, hey, can you resend all those letters? And here's the problem with the strategy that we did. And you're just like, you're in a panic now.
So do you find yourself having to educate, like getting back to the comment of like, an experience is a continuum. It's not bound by the lease and it happens every single day. And so like, I mean, I find it's kind of, it's not shocking, but like if the Atlanta airport cares more about the cleanliness of the bathrooms than the whatever, XYZ properties in Chicago cares about the cleanliness of their fitness center, right? Like, you're starting to see that the data collection is happening all around us, right? Yeah. And like the success of pulse surveys of like regular greens, right, in order to create a predictability, but what it does is it creates predictability around the parts of the experience, and maybe not even for that resident, but you can begin to start saying the fitness center at XYZ properties in Chicago has a negative correlation with renewals because people are consistently having a bad experience there. And so what are we doing there? Let's upgrade that and communicate that back to the residents.
That's the whole gist of it. Because if you look at it, I agree with you. I think pulse surveys have been tremendously valuable. But it used to be, and I think there's a huge change. I'm not saying this is how it is today, but I think also with our platform, it used to be bulletin board material. It used to be boardroom material, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's pull up and see what the the satisfaction is. It was like, what did we take action on?
Right.
You just made the perfect example. Hey, because we'll show the trends of like where people are like, this is why I'm not renewing. It's like, that's where you want to point your teams. Be like, we need to make that change. If it's like all of a sudden it's, maintenance requests has
Yeah.
been the biggest issue. Well,
Yep.
that's a playbook. That's where you can go in and say, we've got to fix this because this, it's going to, aid in the future of our renewals.
We find it so wild, the data that we collect. And again, we feed into kind of like a system like yours, data that we collect around customer appreciation and NPS
Mhm.
around our experience. And again, like not selling what we do, but like it's just the current state is so bad in so many ways
Yeah.
that to take a port over a customer experience practice like discipline from another vertical,
Mhm.
bring it into multifamily and apply it, the swing is so significant
Mhm.
because it's so bad. And it's not anybody's, I guess the worst part is it's not anybody's fault. that
No,
it's bad.
I was going to defend
It's like the
because now this
system,
is where I'm
the
like,
system is broken.
yeah, there's things that, I mean, I think even today with the keynote speaker, where they were like talking about, and we had a whole panel of folks that, very smart individuals with the multifamily. And it was like, we keep talking about how we're going to pull from other vertical, like hospitality.
Yeah.
I think we're getting there because I think now we're like kind of, the pressure point is off, right?
Mhm.
Now it's like, we have, ways of doing our business better
Mhm.
that now we can open that door to be like, okay, this is how we're going to do hospitality. This is how we're going to make those improvements.
Yeah.
But when you bog everybody down, there's just no way that you can, take that leadership stance.
What's
without
interesting about
cleaning up
hospitality,
things.
what's interesting about hospitality is that while it looks similar on the surface, it's very different from a revenue
100%,
perspective,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Because you've
But
got
there's things you can,
those total places to borrow. And so what I find interesting is that like this industry, because we're talking about the home, right?
Mhm.
It's like there's so many things that you can port over from so many different industries,
Mhm.
right? Like, we started in utilities and now we're kind of in the multifamily space because it's like the experiences that we delivered for those kind of companies was the exact same problem. Like the problem that we solved ports over one for
Mhm.
one.
Yep.
It's just a different vertical that was doing the buying. And so that's what makes it interesting about the opportunity before I think everybody is that a lot of technology is already proven. We're not to what we were saying earlier. There's no reinvention here.
No,
This is just it's
no.
a tuning and a fit for
Yep.
for property management. And of course, even within property management, like the SFR, BTR, and the multifamily,
Yep.
I'll say low density to high rise, those are all different. They've all different nuances on the same
Yep.
on different problems.
Well, and I think too, like, what we're hearing in the halls of this conference is that I think now, maybe 2 years ago, there was a fear factor,
Mhm.
what are we going to, allow for technology to do? We're not ready for it.
Yep.
The advancement is here. And I think finally we just heard kind of I'm going to, like exhale and say,
Mhm.
yes, we are going to welcome this. And I
Mhm.
think the advancements we're going to start to see, faster than what we had, previously seen in the past year and a half too.
I would completely agree with that statement. Like it sounded like you look back at old shows or old conversations, and it was like it was very fanfare-ish,
Mhm.
right? And really trying to get to drum up everybody's
Yep.
excitement for it. But it still was the promised land. It still
Yeah.
wasn't the current
Like,
existence.
oh, we aren't ready for that.
Yeah.
I
And
like
then-
it, but
But then today, what we heard was really interesting because it was going beyond like get everybody excited about it. It was like permission was given,
Mhm.
right? To use it, to
Yep.
use artificial intelligence, to use automation, to use outsourcing, which was totally like bad words
Yeah.
to say, right? So permission was given. And I would say that was the first time I've heard it be so blunt
And it was loud.
about outsourcing,
Yep.
about offshoring. And I was not prepared. I mean, I'm
Mm-mm.
thrilled,
No, yeah.
but I
Me
wasn't prepared for that level of bluntness in with respect to optimizing operational
Yeah. Because I
optics.
like sitting in the back of the room to see reactions. When I have these big speaking engagements where it's like a whole panel. It was the first time I've not seen the
100%.
and it was more like everybody was locked in. It was like, and it was a very large, audience.
Well, it was
okay.
3 conference rooms. It was
Yeah.
like A, B, and C, right?
Yep.
So there was I don't know 4,000 people in the room.
Yeah.
5,000
First time
people.
I didn't hear gasps or.
Well, I thought it was interesting when one of the, and I won't let you guys catch the show, the replay, but like one of the panelists was pretty pretty clear that if you don't use AI,
This was a good one.
you're gonna get fired.
Yes.
And I was like,
Very
I wanted to
blunt.
stand out and hoot, but I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like get on or get off. You know,
Yeah.
it was like we're just gonna keep on going. And I mean, I appreciate that. You know, being from Chicago, sometimes a little blunt.
Yeah.
That was a little over the top, but you know.
But I appreciate the fact that they were actually being direct about it. And this is a founder CEO, right? And the founder CEO, the conviction to say that this is the way we do things. It was like we've got AI built into our values. We're a prop tech company, right? I mean, for a owner, operator, founder of different types of properties, and to get up with that kind of conviction, saying if you're not using AI, you're probably not gonna be around here in a couple of years.
It's because the metrics are all coming out now. You
And
know,
it's crazy.
It's like, you know, where the other panelist was like, we were getting what I think it was like 65% of residents going through their, you know, contact center was requesting, you know, live help.
Yeah.
And then they installed AI and it went down to 35.
Yeah.
Those are things you can't argue. Like with our automation, 73% of residents will go through this without any human intervention.
It is
like, you know, that's what you want to hear.
I totally,
you know?
and what I find crazy, like when we're talking to prospects, is they're often like, well, you know, they want to talk to a person. I'm like, no, that's the only choice they have right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That was because
then of course they all love it. Because it's the only, you know, I can talk to, you know, Sue between 9 and 4.
Oh, so convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. 9 and 4 Monday through Friday, right? And not on holidays. And people overwhelmingly choose that choice. Well, it's the only choice.
It's the only choice. And you know, and there's still going to be, I mean, even with renewals, you know, we are always going to tell you there's going to be somebody that wants to talk directly to the team.
Of course.
And that absolutely should be that. And that's why those folks are there. But be more convenient. So we get people making, you know, renewal decisions or reaching out at all hours.
Yeah.
Same thing. Maybe you just need, you know, something, you know, that is going to take care of the small tasks to get, you know, answers or questions answered, that they can get a prospect into the lead funnel and get them down the line so you can come in and close.
And one thing that we learned, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing, is that consumers choose to activate their demand, like whatever they're looking to solve. If they're allowed to do it at their own time, they will do it at their own time versus just looking for the time when you're available. And if you're not available at that time, they will choose to spend.
That's the consequence.
Right, other places. So like if your renewal is not available, if it's hard to renew, like take my money, then I'm just going to find something else.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think, and
keep in mind, you're competing with.
But it is,
You're not only trying to renew that dollars, but there are 2 buildings across the street that are trying to take your residents.
And that is happening all the time. And that's like, you know, where we see, and operators agree, when responses lag, this is where you're going to start erode your revenue, because we just give too much, you know, of that valuable time back for them to start, you know, for the residents to start looking around,
look up and look around,
know, and not providing them the tools to be like, what else can we help you with? Do you need somewhere else to live? Do you need another community to live in? That's where it's like accelerating those has such a, you know, impact on the resident experience and for the operator.
Yeah. When people are looking at the renewal problem, what are the things that they consider?
So it is, I mean, right now it was, I mean, first and foremost, it was a terminology of leakage. You know, we've just got to close the, you know, the back door. We have to find a way to get residents to retain themselves within the property, within the network. So that is, you know, the biggest thing. The other things that now here's where, you know, we can get the scaries out there, is that, you know, when we were doing our research, it was compliance. Compliance was another thing that gives, you know, everybody fits, because it was like, you know, like if you didn't send your renewal out in, you know, South Florida by, you know, 60 days, right? Well, guess what? Now your 9% that you wanted to go to market with, now it's 4. You know, and that happens. There's a lot of regulations that are all over the country right now. The other thing, you know, was like there was, you know, because there's so much staff turnover. Oh yeah, I'm the new manager. I thought Guillermo sent out. He didn't send them out. Okay, so we missed an entire month, and now all those residents went month to month. And, you know, those are the things that keep, you know, operators up at night, that are still impacting today. And then it also is like, I know my team doesn't have the time to nurture the renewal moment. And that's the biggest thing. The other side of it is the lack of visibility. everything's so manual.
Yeah.
You can't like just go in and say, okay, let me pull up,
Oh yeah, it's an Excel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're hopeful that it was, and again, staff turnover. And this is
Mm-hmm.
nothing against operators. This is just what's happening today. That's been happening since I was on site. That those manual processes, it's like when the regional is pulling up and you're like, oh, I got to update the renewal log. No, that's gone. That's everything is here.
Yeah.
From,
I mean, it's got to be like to your point about compliance and audit. Like it's got to be much easier to have all this stuff. Like if you're doing a DD on a building, and I
think
want
about that.
Like imagine all the, and you got to go, open up the rat's nest,
all the manual,
of leases and everything like that.
No, even for the reporting suite that we have, that's where it's like you even hear from from the site teams to the regional managers and on up. They're like, oh my gosh, I can show my owner this. Here's everything that's been going on as trends for your renewals. That has a powerful impact, and that's what is like. I can give bits and pieces. I can pull a report from this part, but nothing was like is what you see today.
And so they are doing it with they're doing it poorly.
Yeah.
And they're doing it with people who aren't full-time.
I hate saying poorly because I mean, there's so many constraints on the teams. I think this is where, I really do have.
Well, I mean, I think I'm empathetic to the people because they're doing other things. Like that was kind of my point. Is that
it's just the lack of resources.
Yeah. So anything not done wholly is done poorly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm not.
I thought you were Canadian. I thought you were supposed to be a little sweeter.
I spent so much time with Texans.
No offense to the Texans.
I love it. They're so blunt. It's beautiful.
Come to Chicago. We'll
show me something. Yeah, fair enough. But just the lack of resources allocated towards your revenue base and discipline, right? Around. So they're really. I mean, you can't. It's probably something you can't really outsource. Like, can you? Like, could you have an agency? I mean, in terms of if I was to Google, like, how do I solve a renewal problem? And there's three options that are type in a GPT, and I get three choices. Like, okay, you can hire a dedicated renewal resource for your region. You could, which is kind of like that's like a fake solution right now because you can't hire the people. And
I hate saying this. No one wants to add more human capital. Capital.
Well, we heard today. It was a good point. That every FTE is $1 million.
So
capital.
Can't do that.
And that's actually, I thought he was pretty low because that's saying $50K salary and then a 5 cap, right?
I don't think that's even hitting it.
No, I think it's more expensive than that. But like where's I going with this? The resources aren't available. There's no agencies. While you can outsource your lease up, you can't outsource your renewal.
No.
So it's something that's a core competency of every operator.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's how you define renewal.
It's your business.
Renewal is retention, and retention is service.
Yeah.
We as a software service, we're the ones that are going to help nurture that side by side with that team, but give the tools necessary that are absent in a lot of places today.
Right.
Because it's just when you start to research things, there are communication tools that are out there. But they're not going deep into the renewal moment, and there's so many parts of that we have uncovered. And that's why we've remained, very steadfast on we are going to go deeper into integrations instead of going wider and getting into other spaces.
Yep.
This is too critical of a moment for us to not dedicate that.
We kind of start eliminating what's possible for alternatives, right? So I can hire more people, which isn't really practical. No. It's you can't outsource it.
Nope.
So you're naturally along this problem, right, in the business. So then it's like core, right? So this is a core competency in the business. And then the third alternative is, you can't outsource it, is technology reorganization, right? And so technology solutions are limited, they're out there. And so, I mean, what a great thing to sell. You've got a core problem in a big business about a problem that's a priority around revenue. I'll say revenue priority, right?
It is.
And so and all those things are being backed by your financing, the balance sheet is activated more so by what you have on your book of revenue versus what you've acquired.
Yep.
Because acquired revenue is flaky.
Yeah.
And so if you've got a good, robust revenue stream, you're going to get a higher valuation on that asset. So it affects both sides of the financial statement, right? You're saving money on the depending who you're talking to, you're saving money on the operational expense for the renewal side. So you're kind of solving that middle piece of the P&L, but in the balance sheet, you're actually able to increase the top number, the numerator on the valuation because you've got more reliable revenue.
Yep. That's
And that's where everyone's at right now in terms of like they're scared about that valuation piece because they're doing a refi and it's higher than what it used, or sorry, if the refi is lower than what it was before, then they're really, chicken bricks. It's my show. I can swear. All right. So what objections do you usually hear?
Oh, all right. Yes, there's always going to be some objections that are out there. And I think that even though we were, saying that the industry is embracing change, is ready to move forward.
Yeah.
We are still an industry that is not fast at embracing change. And I think that, that's the reluctancy with it. I think there's an education piece that still needs to be done, just as you just demonstrated with like the financial impact of it. So, when we put the, the monthly fee out there, I think there's a challenge for, operators to say, okay, I have to add another line expense. And it's like, well, there's things that you can, justify for or move around or look at what the ROI is back to their, the easiest math, the vacancy loss. Program just paid for itself.
Yeah.
If you can't articulate that to an owner, that's where, we've got to really start to, reevaluate how you're going to adopt technology. There's going to be a cost, but there's going to be a benefit.
Yeah.
And that's going to be it. The other thing I will say, and it kind of ties in, to the beginning, the status quo.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. It's working good. And that's where it's like, I will challenge you to go on property, sit with your team for a day doing renewals, and they will tell you how many holes there is. It is. It's which it shouldn't be. Again, this is like we're trying to reacquire a resident, and we're saying it's the most miserable experience.
And it's the easiest revenue you'll ever acquire is your renewal.
Yeah.
Right.
You want them to. You paid a lot of money to acquire that resident.
Yeah.
And letting them go out the door, you're paying for the move out costs, the churns. It's just like.
But you still get no's.
Oh yeah.
And so what are the no's? What I mean, does it come out of their mouth? They say, well, how would I pay for the pizza parties if I'm paying for your software?
We might have done that a couple of times. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that there's, again, we are in a transformative process right now where we're starting to get, how about this? Because I know that my founders are watching, we're getting more yeses than no's.
Yeah.
We will still get the no's, but we've never had one that is like, no, this is ridiculous. I don't want it.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a hard pass. It's like, no, I have to work through this. Okay. Well, let's work through that process. Let's look at that timeline. What can we do to make it less, friction for you to adopt to it?
Like I'm of the philosophy that no's make better yeses.
Yeah.
Right. Like the no's that we get. And again, I've said this a couple of times on the show, like, Walt Disney pitched to 308 banks before he funded Disneyland.
It's very true.
And the 309th, and his philosophy was that he wasn't ready the first 308 times to be financed, right? And so the more no's and I'll even first person experience share, like during COVID, we sold like crazy.
Yeah, I bet.
And we didn't know why people were buying. We literally, why'd they buy? I don't know, but they bought and they're already sending us checks. And then COVID came off, and we're like, well, who do we sell for? What's the problem we solve, right? And so like that was a real problem for us because we got too many yeses.
That's
and we didn't know why,
that route. Yeah.
Right. And so now, like in the world that we're in, last couple of years, we've been pursuing specific problems and getting the no's, and the no's have helped shape the yeses.
Yeah.
And so the hell yeses are a function of all the no's we got before.
All the hell no's.
All the hell no's. And we still get no's now, right?
Yeah. And I think that, that's as we're still a young company. I mean, there's just no way around it. But, it's like I think what we would ask of multifamily, sometimes I think there's not enough feedback on the no.
Yeah.
Where it's like all of a sudden it's just like, well, we're just not going to do it now. Like what else happened? And and for young companies to continue to serve in multifamily and even, larger institutions, like you've got to be honest and just be like, what's the problem?
It's interesting you said that because like, I just, because like we've all had deals go sideways, right? And they or not sideways, but outside the funnel, right?
They just kind of,
they kind of ghost or whatever. And I actually,
the ghosting is what's the
and so I've changed my
challenge.
follow-up email now to being, hey, look, and we chatted about this and it seemed to be pretty important at the time. But I'm curious if you're evaluating your other alternatives.
Yeah.
Because I want to, I want to give respect to the fact that we talked about this problem that existed,
Yeah.
and you indicated that it was something that you wanted to solve, and maybe you just aren't getting the right political capital around it. But it used to be like you'd follow up and say, hey, just checking up, are you still interested in going forward?
Yeah.
Or, but now I really want to find out.
Well, I've done it like even the simple as too is like, is this no longer a priority for your organization to
Yeah.
focus on renewals? And it's not to be blunt. It is just like, just
I
tell
need to
me
know.
why.
Yeah.
Like what happened?
And sometimes answering emails a gut check for them.
Yeah.
Like no renewals aren't important right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, no one really, and I get it.
They just send that.
And the other thing too, I think is fair enough for, for our, the audience who are the operators. It's like there's a lot of competing priorities.
Yeah.
And it's, where you have to have like somebody make a prioritization of things like, yes, fraud is really important.
Yeah.
We get that. We've heard that all last year. But it's like, okay, once we get through this, what is the next thing that we want to do? And you have to roadmap it. It's almost like, what we do. Every quarter, we're making our roadmap. We make our roadmap for the year. We make our roadmap for the quarter. What are we going to develop?
Yeah.
That's where it's like where you can come in and say, at renewals, we're going to focus on it because we're about to hit our, bell curve for the summer.
Yeah.
We want to deploy on February. This like, great.
Yep.
Let us know.
And we backcast that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So like, hey, it's coming into summer AC season. We're pitching in Arizona.
Yep, there you go.
What are you going to do? Do you have, we understand this, and that. It's going to be a hot year, 100 days over 100 last year. What are you going to do?
Yes.
Right. And I'm finding that pursuing the no's is actually a more frank conversation. And I'll have to credit one prospect we had. They were a no. They were not now. But, I said, like, well, can we just get a debrief? And so I encourage everyone who's listening from PropTech, like when you get your no's, ask for a debrief.
Yeah.
And if they're, if they're legit about maybe they're not now, or if they've ever been on the sell side before themselves, they'll give you a debrief. And those debriefs are so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, I think there's the no's that create the hell yes.
I mean, any interaction, especially for companies like ourselves, that, we didn't build technology just because we're like, hey, this is all the features we need.
Yeah.
We got that.
I need a lower paying job, more work.
Right. I mean, we just, when we go to research and it's like every time we would peel back a layer, like with the property manager, like, oh, can you solve for this? This is another pain point. Like, great. A debrief of like, you're not solving for our pain points. Wonderful. We'll go build it, if it makes sense, but just be honest.
Yeah. It's a big thing. So that might even lead to our next question here. So kind of wrapping things up. So what is the one piece of advice? So you've been in revenue for a long time.
God.
And so what's one piece of advice you give people that want to find hell yes?
Yeah, gosh, persistence is one thing. I think authenticity is the bigger thing. I've grounded if I reflect on who I am as a person, and I think a lot of people agree, coming from the operations side, and I know that's not a luxury everybody has, but I mean, spending time to understand what the day-to-day is gives me a translation advantage, right? And it's also like a trust advantage. I don't like to sell to people. I like to have conversations like this, where it's like, I'm here to help solve a problem. I'm not going to be that. And that's, that's a hard thing to do, to act as a consultant. But be challenging too, where you're like, I want you to be honest with me. But that, for anybody in a, head of operations, industry principal, strategic sales, listen to understand so better how to sell to them. And it's not even sell. It's like, here's what the tools I'm going to do to help solve your problem. It makes me feel better as a human, in the industry, and as, a servant of the industry. And I think that's where, greater connections come from.
So authentic to yourself.
Authentic to yourself.
To your customer.
Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, it all is just a facade. And I can't be that person.
It takes a bit of mind bending to do that, though.
Oh, yeah.
It takes some work. You can't just walk around and do this, tell me this pen thing.
Yeah, no, please don't.
You really have to understand why they need a pen first.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to listen. And I think that, even when I was on the other side, as head of, marketing communications, I never liked to be sold to. And that would be the first thing I would be like, yeah, we're not doing business,
I find it, of course, I get inbound all the time. And like, I'd be like, well, what's the problem you solve? And if they can't, and they start talking what they do, I'm like, well, that's not on my priority. I don't prioritize things I can buy. I prioritize problems I got to solve.
No. And I think that, maybe as a follow-up too, it's like, jumping, very few people can jump from the operations side to the supplier side.
Yeah.
That takes, a little bit of, some, guts and tricks. And then when I say tricks, I'm just saying like, it's like, you're taking a leap of faith here.
Yeah.
But if you look at the suppliers that you really trust today, so like, I had mentors like, Kathy Arsenault, and she was the one person I always was like going to emulate, and then she introduced me to, many other, great, folks that were selling in multifamily. Those are the people I emulate all the time, and I can, carry on. And it's like even the CEO I work for today, I'll run through a brick wall for that guy, but he was of the same cloth as I was.
Very interesting. It happens, right? I mean, and what's interesting about, for people out there that maybe don't have a mentor available to them, like what I would, in order to bridge that gap, nothing beats a mentor, right?
Yeah.
But in order to bridge that gap, you can do things like you can record your calls.
Yes.
And you can run through GPT and ask for coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that curiosity to get better.
Yep.
And be willing to, the GPT, you're not making yourself vulnerable. You're just like curious.
Yeah.
But to take that feedback you get even from a GPT and activate that, like I find myself learning quite frequently from the GPTs that we program for the sales calls that I've run, because it's just faster turnaround time.
Yep.
Right.
And I'll even say this too, talk to friends, most of us are all friends of the industry. Talk to friends outside the industry, where you can be like, I'm really not understanding what you're telling me. I'm like, that's a really good response.
Oh,
Thank
I know
you.
that. I know that feeling. I know that feeling. Okay. So who should we talk to next?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
On the spot.
Oh, geez. Who should we talk to? You want on the supplier side or you want operator?
Doesn't matter. Operator would be good. We're trying to get some more operators on here.
I would put, gosh, if you could get Cindy Fisher.
Okay.
I think
we'll find Cindy Fisher.
She's here.
Where's she here? Where's she at?
She's probably in session right now.
No, but what?
She's with Kettler Property Management out in DC.
All right. That's on my list. Cindy Fisher. All right, Cindy, we're gonna find you. And how can we get a hold of you?
Oh, that's easy. It is Darcey, DARCEY at heyrenew.com. If you want to learn more, our website is heyrenew.com. The company name is really just Renew, so don't call up and say, hey, Renew, but it's always a good correction.
But only if you're trying to solve revenue problems.
Say, hey, yeah, say, hey, Renew. But I just want to say this was a pleasure. This is a lot of this very non-traditional for me to do in a conference. Usually I'm running all around. So sitting down for an hour just talking with you has been fun.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I'm glad you made time at the conference, and these things are time intensive, but it is nice to get a break and do these things live in person. Thanks everyone for listening today. Appreciate it. We're gonna find Cindy Fisher, be authentic. And educate the market.
Educate the market. Right. It's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody. We are on Apple, on Spotify. Like, comment. If this will be on LinkedIn, so please comment on there. We'll both get notifications and answer any questions. And the blog and a podcast will come out in the next couple of weeks. Thanks a lot for for being here today. All right, it was fun.
It was great fun.
There we go. Boom. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. And we're done.
That was fun.